Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our April 7th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Ball?
Yep. Before we enter into the rest of our regular meeting this evening, we're going to be entering into a committee meeting of the whole to discuss the proposed ordinance number 410, an ordinance to establish rules and regulations regarding the proper use and permitting of use for the public right-of-way within the city. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we have talked over the last year, been working on a comprehensive right-of-way ordinance. It's something that actually I've been looking at for a couple of years. Some of these same issues were coming up or have been coming up. Such as boulevard issues, when the contractors are working on projects within the right-of-way that are residential based, not city utility based. And our charter and our current ordinances do not have any language dealing with these issues. So I did some homework, got some examples from other communities, asked around the state. And what I'm presenting tonight is the first reading of a comprehensive right-of-way ordinance. And basically, in a nutshell, what it does is it goes through your basic definitions, talks about the permitting for digging into our right-of-way, whether that be through sidewalk, boulevard, or actually out in the street, and then consequently the restoration thereof. It's actually kind of timely that we're talking about this evening, since we're going through the same exact process now with a water main break over on US 8. We have to go through a process with MDOT similar to what we're going to ask for our streets. In that, we want to ensure that the restoration of our street is done accordingly and in a timely fashion. Some of the other areas of the ordinance also takes into effect some of the activities such as maintenance on the boulevard to ensure proper maintenance on the boulevards, sidewalks, and just protecting the public property, public way. I tried in my report to outline the different sections of the ordinance, tried to address some of the things that have come up, some of the issues that have come up over the past year, such as parking over the sidewalks and temporary signs that would be on the city property, such as the boulevards. Again, in the past, when it comes to temporary signs in the past, we've had, through our zoning ordinance, we've had some very specific, strict language of no signs on the public right-of-way. However, that's not practical in the policy that I think the council wanted to extend. So what we did was we took those comments and we tried to put it in the ordinance, allowing for specific uses and to try and keep some order to the signs. Same as with the parking on the sidewalks. We took that conversation we had in the fall. We looked at what are some of the issues, some of the regulations that we may want to move forward with, and how we would policy that or police that activity and work with the residents on trying to come up with a reasonable accommodation. We do realize that there are some property-specific hardship, and we can deal with it very similar to how we deal with zoning and hardship and variation within zoning. One thing to keep in mind when we're dealing with property maintenance and zoning codes, those are codes that are designed for regulation on someone's property, not on public property. And that's where this ordinance needs to put the final tie on how we manage public property. I guess at this point, because it's first reading, I'll open it up to public, or to council comment. We will have this ordinance available for the public to view. Trish will put this out on the webpage. We can have copies here at City Hall. And what we wanted to do is allow over the next couple weeks for your review and comment. Question, you can get a hold of me. And we'd like to then, in the next step, if council is comfortable with that, we could go to a public hearing. You do not have to pass the ordinance following a public hearing, but we do need to, or we should have a public hearing on the ordinance. One thing I want to remind you, in the very opening paragraph of my report, I want to point out that we do not, under charter, have the reading requirements as some of the newer charters have, where you have a first reading, second reading, third reading. What we've done, what staff has put together, what I put together is a reading process, because I think it's a good policy, to put this out so that you have adequate time for comment. So I'm going to open it up right now for questions and where you guys might want to go with this for the coming up month.
Well, I guess the first question I have is this going to deal with those issues with the water lines, people putting their own utilities underneath our road?
This has, the ordinance has some specific language that deals with any activity digging or below or above public right-of-way or public property. So someone would have to come to the city to do that. We specifically left out the language that said you can't do it or you can do it, because the ordinance is just the vehicle of, what you're asking, or that part of it would be more of a policy directive.
But the ordinance mostly just states that a utility would be able to put use the right of way.
You can, but what you can do is you can specify what kind of utility. Like, we know that for water and sewer, you're going to have that utility, even though it's privately owned, it's going to be in public right of way. The irrigation lines that we talked about, they're not necessary for the health and safety of the property. That is a policy of the council at the time to allow that or not allow that. So we did not. Now, you can add it to it and say that is specifically not allowed or that is specifically allowed, but we purposely left that out of this particular reading. We wanted to make sure that that was what the council wanted to do or how they wanted to handle it.
That would be its own separate discussion,
Yeah.
aside from this.
I will tell you that I am
it should be somewhat tied to this. I mean, we're dealing with right-of-way, and these lines are in the right-of-way.
Right.
Whether we specifically mention it or at least leave, there should be some definition.
I will tell you that I am not, and I don't think any of our staff would be very comfortable coming up with a set of standards for those irrigation lines under right-of-way, specifically out to over at Strawberry Lake, where it's all public around, and the pump is on public property, because if something does happen, we sanction that event. We set up the policy or the standards for that. So that is an area that we're not very comfortable with, even though we have a permitting process. Water lines, sewer lines, the more standard type of utility, that happens on a regular basis. Especially electric lines running through or under, those are, the liability there is a little greater for us if we sanction it.
Going back on that a little bit, Ray, or again, say on your irrigation over by Strawberry Lake, I'm assuming that the area, Strawberry Lake and the area around it, the city owns.
City owns, yes, completely around it.
Okay, so, I mean, say where we're having a problem now, where the guy that's looking for, to get water across it, the city still has to give them permission to pump the water. I mean, sure, you'd be allowed to going underneath the road, I mean, he's still on somebody else's property on the other side.
Right.
So, I mean, he has to get permission to be there and to pump out of the lake. So, I mean, even if, yeah, okay, I'm gonna take all responsibility and all this, but now I'm on your property, can I still draw water out of your pond, basically? So, I mean, I think there's a lot of other bridges that have to be crossed before you get to the point, yeah, okay, you can cross, but what good is it when you get over there? You're not gonna be able, we're not gonna allow you to pump water. So, I mean, you know, I think there's a lot more that could be involved here beside the fact, yeah, okay, we'll let you bore underneath the road, but what good is it gonna do you?
That was why we specifically left a lot of the definitions and discussion of that out of this ordinance. So that one can be all discussed and hashed out on its own. And like you said, everything needs to be considered besides just crossing under the road.
Yeah, yeah. And, well, if you wanna elaborate more on some of these other ordinances here, the same thing with, the snow plowing and parking on the street during the winter season. That's fine and dandy. But I think before we start enforcing these laws like we did last year, we got to have perimeters that the people can go park someplace. I mean, you just can't say, well, you can't park on the road, but if I don't have any place to, I gotta park on a boulevard, I gotta park someplace.
Yeah.
You've gotta give them other guidelines that they bend other rules so that they can keep their cars off the street.
And the timing is good for right now, because when we started talking about this parking or sidewalk issue, we were right in the beginning of winter. And if somebody had to do some work on their property in order to come up with the parking spaces, I mean, the timing was not good at all for that. So we suspended that issue throughout this winter. Timing is good now because as we go into the summer, you know, just like when we look at a zoning issue, there's a difference between, you know, when you define hardship, if it's something that is that you create, or is it something that is truly a hardship? I think of certain areas in town where you physically can't come off of your alley or you have no alley. You know, those are physical hardships that you just can't, there's no way you're gonna deal with that. But by putting up a privacy fence or having some kind of obstruction in your backyard that you created, that's a hardship you created. So, you know, we have to have those discussions with them, and because your zoning code is very clear that each house is supposed to have 2 off-street parking spaces. You know, because you can't park in your garage, or you can't park in your garage because you have it full of stuff, is a hardship you create. I mean, it's not, you have to look at it and say, can you do this without, you know, can you do something to allow you to get those off-street parking spaces?
Well, and what we're proposing in this is to allow for the winter parking, to park on the boulevard as it is now. If your boulevard isn't wide enough that you can park your vehicle on it, we're allowing you to obstruct the sidewalk if you can, they can have a 2-foot wide path of concrete or gravel around the vehicle. So somebody walking doesn't have to go into the grass or where the grass would be, or into the street to get around you.
Or a snowbank.
Yeah, so if they can get around your vehicle, if they have a 2-foot wide path around your vehicle somehow and stay on the concrete or asphalt, then you're gonna allow obstructing the sidewalk, parking on the sidewalk, if your boulevard is too small for a vehicle.
Well, another example of that is working with a few of the businesses where, you know, basically they have very limited parking in general, okay? And they use a boulevard to park straight in. You know, you don't want to have the people walking out into the street. So if they could park where they could have an area so people can walk in front of the cars, you know, keep them from the building, you know, then we're okay. If you just say you can't park on the sidewalk, period, that was one of the complaints that we received, is like, where in the heck are these people gonna park?
Exactly.
And so we wanna work with those
We've got to
businesses.
adjust the problems that we can see
Right.
beforehand, rather than just come say, you know, we're drawing a line here, this is it, you gotta follow it, I mean.
This
it's
ordinance,
impossible.
this ordinance allows for that. But what we want to do is we want to have that conversation with that business owner, that homeowner, the property owner, and say, look, it's almost like a conditional.
Right.
You know, this is what we'd like to see, and you can do it, you know, you can park this way as long as we can get people around. The last example I want to give, and this is probably a very common one, you know, we've had this conversation where you have a garage that's very close to the sidewalk. You can't park between the sidewalk and your garage, okay? So you're parking on the sidewalk. If a person, you know, what we'll ask the people to do is if a person can walk down the sidewalk, can walk around your car and stay on your approach, then you're fine. You know, one way or the other.
Either in front or behind?
Either front or behind. Just stay on your approach so that they don't have to walk out in the grass or walk out in the road, you know. That's what we're trying to do, is just to keep, it's a safety issue, you know, for people walking, so.
From day one, my big concern on that was with the safe routes to school. I mean, here we are widening sidewalks, and the state's giving us a lot of money to do this, and all of a sudden, you can't walk down the sidewalk. But here in section 37, the parking on sidewalks, I see where I think that should cover it, where you leave the 2-foot space, where you don't have kids or people even walking, where they don't have to go out onto the road.
Exactly.
And the other thing here is in section 54-53, the area of snow clearing and depositing near intersections or on public property is the main problem. Well, that is a big problem, because if you plow your lot, your boulevard to park your car, and you're pushing snow, and we've had a bad winter, and all of a sudden you've got a 6-foot snowbank over the sidewalk, you are totally blocking the sidewalk. That, to me, is, something has to be done about that. That's totally unacceptable.
Right.
Although, on section 54, required clearing and snow removal, the occupant of every lot or premises adjoining any street, or the owner of such lot or premises, if same are not occupied, shall clear and keep cleared all sidewalks. So is that saying I'm a 85-year-old woman and I got a 75-foot frontage, I have to keep that shovel?
You know, Lee, now, talking about that, with our snowplow unit, that created another can of worms. Because now all of a sudden, you're plowing it just for school, and the people, matter of fact, a lady on, over in Mary's area over there, called me up and madder than heck. She seen the blower go down the other side of the street. And she said, well, how come the city blower's going over there? When are they gonna do mine? I said, they are. Just give a little bit of time. Well, when did they start that? I mean, this is 2 months into the season already, and she didn't know that we were plowing sidewalks. So, I mean, by doing this, you're trying to be a good fella, but it's hurting us in other places. Well, the places that you can't get to immediately to do.
Well, like Lee said, I thought we weren't gonna be requiring clearing of sidewalks, and this pretty much says required.
This does. We spent quite a bit of time, Joe and I and Chief Schaefer got together and went through a number of these areas, because we wanted to address those areas that we needed to address. This is, I'll tell you, this right here, this language that you just read is boilerplate standard language in every single ordinance that I read. I mean, if you go, all the UP cities, the ones that we don't, if you ask them, do they enforce this, they'll say no.
Well,
Okay.
it's nice, I noticed a couple times you come into town on US 8 there, and every block is cleaned out real nice. But I think there's a couple of guys over there that pretty much take care of the whole block themselves with a snowblower.
We spent quite a bit of time on going over this, and I was back and forth as to whether we put this language in, because I don't think, based on my conversations with the council over the last couple of years, you really want to have a strict enforcement of all sidewalks to be clean.
I
So,
think here, Ray, the thing
You
is,
know, could be a policy
if-
issue as
how
much as
can you-
anything else.
go out and give tickets to some people for not shoveling snow, and when we got a piece of equipment and we're blowing it, for other people. I mean, you take this thing to court, I mean, they'd laugh you out of court.
I added this language so that we'd have this conversation.
No,
actually, you know, and
I know where you're coming
Yeah.
from, but I mean, it isn't, Lee, I mean, you know common sense. There's no way you can enforce it, that you couldn't.
Well, but I realize that, that's why I mentioned it, because it's required here. But now, something to think about is to use that machine strictly for the safe routes to school. And then there should be no complaints. Why are they getting my sidewalk, their sidewalk, and not mine? I mean, that's what that machine is for,
And the highway.
Not really.
and the highway.
Not really. You'd have people jamming in here for arguing that situation, Lee. You're using public money just to keep a part of the sidewalks open?
Well, what's the
I
sense of having safe
wouldn't want
routes?
to be involved in it.
What's the sense of having safe routes to school then, if you don't
I
have
agree.
a
But you ain't
sidewalk
gonna
plowed?
plow half the sidewalks and let the other half open, not plowed.
I think that it's a great policy discussion as to how we want to, you know, utilize the machine. I think it's been very successful, you know, since we've had the machine. There's some improvements to the infrastructure that needs to happen. It doesn't work as well when you have the 4-foot sidewalks. You know,
No,
we need to have a better sidewalks, and even along the highway. I've been talking to the DDA about trying to come up with making some improvements, you know, to help in this area. But I will tell you that when it comes to clearing the snow, the main issues are piling the snow on or around intersections, from public property from private property onto public property, and around alleys. By far, those are the worst, the hardest issues that we have. We get more complaints about that throughout the winter than any other singular issue. You know, our old ordinance talked about you could pile it, but it had to be on public property, and it could only be 3 foot tall. Well, it didn't say anything about alleys, it just said streets. So we have a number of alleys where we get the snow is piled high. And I think that, you know, what we tried to do in this ordinance is to clearly identify that, which I think we did. And that is an area that we are going to concentrate on next year. You know, that we're more than happy to, or willing to work with the businesses, especially that along the highway that have some challenges. But we can't have them just plowing it up to the road, up to the alleys, having these obstructions, and then now we're forced, literally forced, to get over there with our loader and get rid of it. They need to go to the backside of the property, and then when we have the ability, the time, you know, we'll come in and we'll get rid of it. You know, but we have to do it on our schedule, because, you know, like this year, we hadn't had time to even turn around since January 1st with the water issues, so. But those are areas that we wanted to address when it comes to clearing of snow and snow removal. We did keep the sidewalk language in there, like I said. I think it's a good, healthy discussion of policy, where we want to go with it. If you want that removed, we could remove it, or you could keep it in there and just say, look, this is for this ordinance. This is how we want it administered at this point.
Well,
So we could do that.
if we're not going to enforce it, we shouldn't have it in there. And personally, I can't support it. I can't support this ordinance with that in there, because if they don't clear it, you can order them to do it and then special assess them for it. I don't think that's right. And so I can't support this ordinance. If that's
And I think most people that can are keeping their
right,
sidewalks
most do.
clear the best that they
It's the ones
can.
who can't that
But it has been a brutal winter too. But I said you can't expect somebody that may have a problem, or an elderly person that just can't do it and can't pay some kid whatever it will be to do it, you know.
Well, is this much different than our, you know, lawn ordinance that we have? You know, people have to keep their lawn mowed and under a certain height. I kind of see it the same way. You maintain your lawn in the summer, you maintain your sidewalks in the winter. Maybe 24 hours is a little short, because I know I don't get on and do my sidewalks at 24 hours after it snows, but I agree that if we're not gonna enforce it, what's the point of even having it in the ordinance? But if we can make it a little more reasonable.
Chris, I mean, every city, I agree with Rick, every city's got it in there. I mean, in Green Bay, Appleton, all your bigger cities down there, they do enforce it. I mean, but can we do it around here and enforce it? I'd never vote for it because that would be, I mean, not when we got a machine going around plowing half the snow and then you're gonna write tickets to somebody that don't wanna shovel theirs. And, you know, Chris, I'll go another step. The same thing with our weed deal. By the time Jim sends the letters out, you got 2 weeks or 10 days to what you call, if you cut your grass 3 times a summer,
Well,
you got everything covered. But yet the lawn looks like crap all year round. So I mean, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. No matter what you look at or how you do it here, you're in trouble. Unless we can stay right on top of it continuously. Then you gotta hire more people for that. I hate to be a devil's advocate and shoot down everything that's coming up, but these are the facts and this is what you're gonna face.
There's no point in having sidewalks you can't walk on it.
So you say we should take out all the sidewalks then and just go back to paths?
No, it's not what I'm suggesting, but we got sidewalks and I think we gotta change what the recommended size of a sidewalk so we'll conform with the safe routes to school. People replace sidewalks.
I would think
Because
we have
obviously
to.
today's sidewalks are this wide, and people are this wide, and they don't make it down the sidewalk, nobody uses it. No, people are walking down the roads because the sidewalks aren't plowed or they're too narrow.
I think we have been, when people have done sidewalks and running the sidewalk replacement program, they were going with the 5-foot sidewalk, not the 4.
not when they did mine. That was only 5 years ago.
Well, we suspended the shared sidewalk replacement because what we were getting is individual squares in between a length of sidewalk. And really, the only way to do it is to replace it in kind, which is 4 feet. And we really should have a 5-foot sidewalk, minimum. You know, so we suspended that. We really should do full lengths. When you replace sidewalk, it should go from street to street, just do full lengths and then get it 5 foot, so you have a proper sidewalk width.
That's what I had, whole, they only put 4 foot back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but from your lot line to the lot line.
Well, from my driveway to the road, it's on the corner.
Yeah, I replaced all mine too, Chris, but that was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
10 years ago, and,
you
know,
must have
I went
done it
back
before we
original.
stopped.
I'm sorry I did it, but I wish I had a wider one too, but I mean, at that time.
So I would think that we'd have that in the ordinance, the recommended width of a sidewalk.
Doc, that is not standard to put in an ordinance. Those are specifications that you have in your policies.
Okay.
So I have a series of policies that I'm working on now in kind of in parallel to this, and all of that would go into those policies. So this just references that you get a permit and you go through the policies established by the council.
I don't think we can use our sidewalk machine to clean every sidewalk in the city either, so that's unrealistic. It would take them several days with one machine.
That's why I had mentioned, I could see using it for the safe routes to school. I know they've used it along the highway, but by the time they get there and you've got the county plows pushing that heavy slop up on there, well, if you don't get it right away, I mean, you gotta scrape it right away, you're in trouble. That thing just jumps all over the place. I mean, it's better than nothing, but is it feasible?
Especially if they're cleaning up that kind of event, we're in the middle of cleaning it up too, so.
Although this year, I have to admit, I think I haven't seen anybody actually walking on US 2, like going up to the Thirsty Whale. They are walking on what's supposed to be a cleared sidewalk, and it's some pretty rough going, but the big banks are knocked down anyway.
We'll review sections 54 and 55, and we'll come up with some either no language or alternative language based on council comments.
Anybody, any other comments on this? Okay. Now we'll get into the regular meeting. We need approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 17th, 2014.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 17th.
Second?
Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes?
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval manifest 2014-07 in the amount of $360,073.28. Dr. Hayes.
No questions.
Wait.
I got one question here. Yeah, it's under Park and Recs. Here we go. Recreation Department, last item, professional services, Coleman Engineering, Hanbury Lake Beach cleanup permit fee?
Well, we asked Coleman Engineering to help us. We have to apply for a permit in order to do some cleanup on.
Is that like if we get into the lake and start dredging it or something to, I mean, to clear it out? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
to restore the beach, kind of more.
That's what I thought it was, but I just wanted to make sure. That's all I have.
George.
I got one here, I got a couple of them, but, Mary or Wayne or Ray, I noticed that every group has got unemployment insurance that we're paying, and it's quite some large sums here. I know I've been out of business for a number of years. Does this rate ever come down, Mary, or is this rate such as this, and this is what we pay every 4 quarters?
The rate fluctuates every year. It's based on historical numbers. So the rate does fluctuate, but the first quarter is always the highest payment we make because we only pay on the first $9,500 of each employee's earnings. So your first quarter is always going to be your highest. This quarter total was roughly 23,000. When we get to the fourth quarter, it's
I didn't add them up, but
yeah, it's about 23,000 off the top of my head. When you get to the fourth quarter, you're paying maybe $400.
okay. That's the first time I ever come across it, and I said, Jesus, it seems that it's really high, and I thought, I know when I was in business, if you never used it, every year it continuously went down to next to nothing. And I mentioned the lease, said, yeah, it's on there every quarter, but I didn't, but no, I'm glad to see that it goes down continuously.
Can I follow up on that, George?
Sure.
Again, it's ridiculously high to me, but when was technically the last time that the city laid anybody off outside of the golf course crew? And you would think, because they're seasonal workers, I'm assuming they draw their unemployment, right?
Right.
And yet their fee is, excuse me, their fee is like only $400.
Right, but their fee is $400 this quarter because they don't have any employees out there this quarter, other than Kurt. In
But-
the summertime, in the second and third quarter, you'll see it higher in the golf course because you have employees out there, because it's based on earnings.
Oh, okay, I was thinking it's based on because they're paying out now because these people are collecting unemployment.
It's a percentage of payroll, but only the first $9,500. So right now, we're paying on all of your full-time employees for this first quarter. And then once you get your seasonal employees in the summer, you'll pay on those at that time.
And that will be coming out of the Park and Recs or the Golf Commission?
Yes.
Well, that actually comes out of the employees.
No, the city
No,
pays
that's
the
right, the city
employee,
pays it, yeah.
But
Comes out of the fund.
It comes out of whatever fund they're working out of, either public works or recreation or the golf.
Yeah, we budget for that. in the
Yes.
fund.
The other one was on page 2, Scott Savello, almost right in the middle, $413 a quarter expenses, multi-bridge. Is this something that we're in a joint share here with the county on
Yeah.
something, Mary or Ray? Or?
Yeah, it's a joint effort. It's run through the sheriff's office, sheriff's department, and then each agency within the county is assessed based on that.
Okay, that's all I have, Jeremy.
Chris.
I just have one on page 6, under electric, CJ Graphics, business cards for J Forbes, WPPI.
Yes, that's our new customer service representative from WPPI. And
Buy his business cards?
we buy his business cards because they're City of Norway business cards. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, and I don't have any other questions. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move that we pay, if I can come out with the amount here. Whatever the amount is, sure.
$360,073.28.
Support.
Motion made by George, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on the minutes manifest or any agenda item? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. If not, there'll be a further time for comment on any subject at the end of the meeting. Okay, this evening we have 3 things under appointments and presentations. The first one is with Bruce Hawkinson of Mead and Hunt is coming to present to us on a water sewer project. Bruce.
Thanks. I enjoyed your discussion about the sidewalks. I still own a house in Gladstone of my mom's, and I have to make arrangements to keep the sidewalk shoveled, even though I'm not there, and I don't know what they do if I don't shovel it, but I'm not gonna try. That's an interesting discussion. It's kind of a tough issue. I'm not gonna take a lot of time tonight. What I wanted to do was just make you guys aware of what's happening with these water sewer projects, and tell you that unless the council would decide otherwise, it would be my intent, and I've talked to Ray about this, to show up at your first meeting of each month and give you a little update and report on what's going on. You know, we got a major project at the wastewater treatment plant that got funded about a year ago. And just recently, the rural development obligated the money for the second part of the sewer project and a water project, which is mostly street stuff, sewer collection pipes, water mains. So we're into some major stuff here. We're in and going to be in. So I thought it would be advantageous for you guys to stay in touch with what's going on with those. So every month I was hoping I could come and give you guys just a brief update. I won't take a lot of time.
Well, and we welcome that update.
Yeah, I think you guys need to be in that loop. I mean, it's your project, city project, so I think it's good to do that. I'm just going to give you a 30-second to 60-second quickie update tonight. The wastewater treatment plant project, you know, has been, it was funded almost a year ago, or just about a year ago. We are probably 90% through the design of the plans and specs. There are other aspects of the project, and I'm not going to get into them tonight. I'll get into more detail in a month with that. But generally, we're looking right now, because of all the approvals and all the other things that are going on, that we're probably going to look to bid that thing this late summer or fall. But it's a good chance that we're not going to start construction until next spring. One of the problems is that if you get, our construction season is so short that, and we have some concrete and block work going on, and if you bid it and the contractors are aware that you're going to start and they're going to be working in cold weather, you're going to pay for cold weather concrete construction, cold weather masonry construction, and we don't want to add those costs in the project. So it's not the kind of project you want to start in October, November. So right now we're looking at probably kicking the construction off about a year from now. We'll see how things go. The other project that just is getting funded, matter of fact, the papers are kind of signed. We really haven't had the official rural development meeting. They're announcing it on Earth Day. But these are 2 projects where the applications have been in as long as the one for the wastewater treatment plant. And we're not sure where we're headed with that schedule-wise. I mean, nothing has started and it won't start for at least a month as far as gathering field work for design and all that. Ray and Mary and I are meeting as we speak, and to put together a lot of the numbers now that we know interest rates on the loan, know how much grant we're getting, we're going to be working to put together all the numbers that you guys have to look at in terms of how rate increases come out. So that's going to be a big discussion item here coming up. So at your meeting in May, I'm going to have, I've already got, there's a legal services agreement that goes along with it. I've already gotten those taken care of with Jay's office. We'll have our engineering agreements here on May 5th for you guys to consider approving. We'll kind of turn on the green light. But I don't know at all what that schedule is going to be. It definitely is at least a 2015 project, that one for sure. Could even spill over into 2016. We're doing a couple boards. They're actually being done right now in Green Bay. I'll probably get them in week after next when I go down there. We're doing a couple boards, one that shows the water project, one that shows the sewer project. And talk to Ray about this, and we'll have those so that they can be out in the lobby out here, so that the citizens can come, when they come in here, they can take a look, and we've put right on there 2015/2016, so they have an idea of the time frame we're looking at, but they'll be able to see which streets we're working on. And the project is set up so that, like a lot of stuff you've done, so we're going to put in water where we need it, sewer where we need it, any storm that we need, new curb and gutters, and streets. And it's a major area. A lot of it's on the south end of town, but there's other places, and once you see the maps, you'll be able to see it. So that's all I really wanted to cover tonight, just to let you know what's going to happen. The other reason I think it'd be good to be here is because you TV these, the information will keep the people up to date too, as to what's going on. So with that, I just will, if anybody's got any questions tonight, General, or Ray, if you want to add anything, I'd be done for tonight.
I don't have anything to add. I mean, we're gonna, over the next month, really spend a lot of time talking about those details.
Yeah,
We got budget hearings coming up in May, so
the wastewater treatment project is a loan-only project. I don't remember the exact dollar amount. It's like 5 million or something. The water project is, we took about 2.8 million. That's loan-only. Sewer project is a 45% grant. The second phase of the sewer project is about 45% grant. It's a 1 million. I don't remember the numbers, Ray. It's a 1.8
it's
loan,
1.6
1.4
on
grant.
It's 1.6 on a loan and 1.2 on a
Okay.
grant.
So we were able to get a pretty good chunk of grant money on that one.
Will the updates in the sewers or in the water system help alleviate some of the frost problems we've had this year?
Well, the only thing that I've talked to Ray about this already. I mean, it's not standard procedure to insulate water services. Most of your freezing problems have been on services. You're seeing and could see when frost comes out of the ground, especially with any older cast iron main, you could see main breaks. You know, the alternative of burying things deeper, and we had extreme frost this year. I mean, it's normal and standard to bury water main 6 feet, have 6 feet of cover. It's actually down about 7 or more, but have 6 feet of cover. You start burying it deeper, you pay for it, particularly if you're in water table or rock. But even the extra foot of digging costs money. This has been a very exceptional winter. But we had one like this 20 years ago. And this stuff we put in the ground today, copper services, it's good, it's for a long time. And 20 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, we could have 8 feet of frost again. And I don't know what other people are thinking, other consultants or DEQ, but one of the things I've thought of is whether we should be putting 2 foot wide, 2 inch thick styrofoam over the water services. That's fairly inexpensive compared to the whole cost. It's an extra factor of safety over this kind of thing. That'll be a discussion item. That's the only thing, Doc, that I'm thinking about. You know, it'll be new material. If you've got old galvanized surfaces, those are gonna probably break, they freeze. Copper's got a little more give to it. But the project itself, aside from what I've just said, is not doing anything to alleviate the potential for some of the stuff that happened this winter. Ductile iron pipe has more give than the old cast, but ductile iron's been going in the ground since the 60s or something like that. So we're probably gonna be getting rid of a lot of stuff up there that was cast iron and putting in ductile iron. So that'll help from the standpoint of a main break with frost.
The budget paperwork that we have from RD, that was developed a couple of years ago, you know, and that was before we had this winter. We're going to go into an extensive design phase. You know, once we get the paperwork signed and we start moving on this summer, we're going to get into an extensive design phase. There's a lot of details that have to be fettered out through that design phase, which this is one of those discussions.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, the city we could decide, I mean, that we want to put stuff, we want to have 7 feet of cover, 6.5 or 7 feet of cover over stuff. That's something we want to consider doing. I think a winter like this, like it was 20 years ago or so, it opens your eyes a little bit to some of the things that can happen, then you kind of forget about it. There's a lot of water main around the UP that's got 6 feet of ground over it. But, and usually the freezing problems are not the mains. Breaking with frost heave when it's down that far is what causes the main breaks. You haven't had any mains freezing, there's enough water flow in them and there's enough volume. It's the services, because they're so small, and the standard now is to put in 1 inch. And I'm not saying that a winter like this, that wouldn't freeze when a 3/4. Well, you got a lot of services out there, used to be 3/4 was kind of the standard. And we run, it's been a standard to run 1 inch copper to the property line. So those will be discussions we'll have with, you know, Ray and Joe and everybody else about what we want to do. But we have to be conscious of the budget too, and you never know that till you bid it. So you can estimate it, but you really don't know until you bid it. So those would all be things we'll be looking at.
Bruce, I was at the kickoff meeting, I guess you'd call it, for the Railroad Avenue project, and that question was brought up, why don't they lay a piece of 2-inch blue board on top of this? And the answer I got on that was, the frost went so deep it wouldn't make no difference because it'll go down past that, come in from the sides, and come back up from the bottom.
The discussion was to put it over a water main?
Yep.
Okay, well, here's the deal with that, is that if you really wanted to prevent the frost from going around it, you'd have to be 4 feet wide. You'd have to put a sheet down.
A full sheet.
A sheet it does a lot to keep the frost. 2 feet, you know, and the problem with 4 feet isn't so much on water mains, but on services, you don't always have that much trench width. So now you're going to excavate a much wider trench, and that trench is going in boulevards and across sidewalks, and you know. So the 4 foot wide is a little unpractical sometime on a service. 2 foot wide would help. You're right. It isn't a guarantee, but I will tell you that 2 foot over a service pipe will help the frost. It might help it enough so that particular service might not freeze. But water main, when you get a water main that's 8 or 12 inches, and you were worried about that, if you were going to put styrofoam on that, you'd probably want to get a sheet width to really make it effective. So maybe that's what they were talking about there, Lee. Most times when we've insulated either shallow sewers or water main that had to be shallow for some reason, it's always 4 feet wide.
Have you ever boxed them in?
No.
Or would that just be
No.
not acceptable?
You get 4 feet of 2-inch styrofoam over a main, and it really does inhibit the frost from coming around. Not that it wouldn't start to encroach, but you know, it's got to. It depends on exactly how cold it is and no snow cover, and it takes the extreme conditions we had this year to really create these problems. But I don't believe you've had any water main freezes, have you, Joe? All the
Yeah,
freezes
we
that-
have.
You had a water main, what size is it?
6,
6 inch?
several of them,
Have we had any sewers freeze up? I
yes.
heard some stories where some of the sewer lines have actually froze up too. I mean,
Yeah, well, I had the building I own here, I had a storm sewer
No, our sewer mains
line
froze too.
froze, but sewer, mainline sewers?
yes.
8-inch sewers froze
Yes,
solid?
yes.
Really?
Froze solid for a good 70 yards.
Yeah, wow, was it shallow, or was it?
No, normal
Standard
depth.
buried?
Yep,
Yeah, that's interesting, because, you know, sewage has a little heat, so if there's any sewage
Yeah.
coming down, the heat will keep it open. I've not heard of a mainline 8-inch sanitary sewer that's at depth. I haven't, that's the first one I've ever heard of that's froze, actually. Wow. Yeah, it was terrible.
And once again, Norway's first.
Well, you may not be the only one. I know that a lot of communities are suffering, and a lot of communities have gone to total community let-runs, everybody. And it's just been a phenomenal winter, bad. So we'll see, you know, I'm not accustomed, I don't think it's worth the money to start 4-foot styrofoaming everything. I mean, sanitary sewers, water main, I don't think that. Certainly when you get shallowed up a little bit, you want to play it safe. So we'll see. But anyway, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll come back with a little more detail next month, and, you know, we'll just keep you guys informed. I have to be in, the city of Munising meets the same nights as you guys do, and we have a project that's going to be under construction there, so the third Mondays, I've kind of committed to be up there, that's why I'm picking the first Monday for here. I hope that works okay.
Bruce, are these pretty much, all these 3 phases pretty much guaranteed? Or is one phase depending on another, to another?
Guaranteed from what standpoint? The funding?
Money.
The funding's been committed. The funding just got committed for these other 2. It was coming, I mean, I would have laid a lot of money on the table, it was gonna come, just a question of when, yeah.
I was just wondering if one
Yep.
depended on the other.
Nope.
to-
Nope, it's all committed, a lot of details, and I think the big thing for you guys is gonna be looking at, you know, what it's gonna take for rate adjustments to make all this work. I will tell you, it's pretty low percentage, it's long-term loan, the loan part, and I know, I've been in these conversations for a lot of years, and I know people are concerned about paying interest for 40 years, but if I could borrow money at 2.5%, I'd probably borrow a lot of money and pay it back over 40 years. And for utilities that are gonna be in the ground for 100, to me, it makes sense to let more than one generation of people pay debt on a utility like that. Different than a street surface, maybe, you know. So I think it's a good program, you know. I don't want to take any more time, but I remember, I was telling Ray this, in I forget when it was, early 80s. Doc, I don't know, were you on the council when we did the water project? When we had public meetings and nobody came? And I'm going to suggest to you guys that as we get down the road, we have public meetings, informational meetings. And we had them in the old city hall, and 3 people would come and 2 people would come, and then the front page of the paper was, Norway water rates are increased 50%. The average user was going to go from approximately $12 a month for water to $18. The next meeting, standing room only. But it was a good deal. Norway got great financing on that. I really can't remember if there was some grant money or not. But what happens is, as you go down the road, you're always more golden once you're through it than the next guys that come along. Because everybody else that came after you on that project, the average user wasn't paying that 18, they were paying something more. And I've watched that now over the years just creep up and creep up and creep up. So you'll see numbers, we'll talk, we'll have meetings, you know, because you gotta be comfortable.
I'll agree with you to a point, Bruce.
Which point?
Because a lot of these projects that we did ahead of time, and I've been watching this, and I mentioned this to Ray a number of times, a lot of these projects that we did, we're way ahead of any of the communities around here, a lot of them in UP, now are getting funding for them because they waited and they're all broke. Now somebody else is paying for them. So I agree with you to a point, but
Well, the only thing I would come back with, George, is that on the average, there's one heck of a lot less grant money floating around than there used to be. It's much tougher. And I will tell you that, I remember the day when I would go to a community and tell them that if they were going to have a project, before they would get into the grant program, that they were going to see utility rate for either water or sewer for the average user was going to be it's going to have to be about $30. Okay, then I remember when I had to tell them that before they got into the grant program, based on the formulas, that the rate for the average user was going to have to be about $35. And now, it's gotten up into the 40s before you get any grant. So, the funding situation is not better today than it was then. Munising, classic example. In 08 and 09, we did a $12 million project there. Okay, and I understand why. The city commission back in the day was my parents' age, generation, Depression era. Okay, they would not take on any debt. They had a chance for a 75% grant, and they wouldn't take on the 25% loan. And they would have wished they did. After they got done, they got just a very little bit of grant money. And their rates would have been settled in when they did, if they would have done that. That was a sewer project mainly at that time. Would have been a lot less than had they waited. The Dimetime plan, even with the loans, the Dimetime plan that communities have tried has not worked out to have been more cost effective for smaller communities than getting just even low interest loan money for 40 years. It's just that costs have gone up and rates keep going up. So you'll see me, and nobody likes, I don't want to get into this tonight, really, wasn't planning to. Nobody likes to see rate increases. You don't like to see them. The people that are watching on TV don't like to see them. But if you're going to maintain your utilities, you need to do something sometime. I lived in Norway when nothing was being done with the hydro and it was subsidizing everything else. And then you had a hydro project, and look what you had to do it to keep it up. You're doing that at the wastewater treatment plant, you're going to be golden down there now for a long time. It's going to be the same thing with stuff in the streets, and Norway's been doing it right. You've been putting in utilities and fixing the streets. And you've been fortunate that you've gone after and have acquired some pretty good financing through MEDC and some of these other programs. And so I think Norway's done well. And this is a big project, and it's in an area where there's a lot of need, and it's the way to get the streets fixed. The problem is that there's not a lot of funding out there for fixing streets. The only way you can do it is to do a double utility project with water and sewer so you can justify curbs and streets.
Bruce, on this project on that south end, is it going to go up I know up Norway Street for sure.
Yeah, it's quite a few, George. I can't remember. I have to look at the map. But it's Second. I know it's 2nd Avenue and then a lot of stuff coming north.
Okay, Ray, how about that cross street? Would it be 3rd? Would it be coming down, say from the school entrance down? What's the?
Yeah, the avenue.
6th, it would be 4th.
Yes, it's
4th.
The next one's.
4th's on the bottom of the hill.
Yeah,
Okay.
4th is at the intersection. It would be the next one up is 3rd.
2nd's up on top?
Yeah, 2nd,
Third,
yeah.
3rd Street.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, I don't remember, George.
I don't know.
But here's part of
the avenues.
I'm just wondering if the streets you're gonna do, if we're gonna end up with half blocks in the middle.
Well,
that aren't gonna be taken care of.
Here's the thing you get into, as long as you ask, is that the only way that you can get the funding, it's water and sewer funding. It's not street funding, okay? It's water and sewer funding. The only way that you can justify curbs on both sides and the street is to have replacing both utilities. Now, there are some streets that don't have both utilities. For example, the sewers run all down the streets, let's call them, and not the avenues. Then, even if you had a water main in the avenue, but no sewer, you will not get the rural development fund. You will not get both curbs and the street. You can't justify that you have to tear out that much. Yeah. And that can.
I was worried about more paving rather.
Yeah,
Not, it'd be nice if you can get all your.
we would, when we go through the project, I can tell you, we looked at that map quite a few times. You know, your Second Avenue from Brown Street to Section Street, Iron Street and Mine Street from Second Avenue all the way down to US 2,
Yeah.
basically. The last section of Norway Street, everybody was upset we didn't do that last 2 blocks, but that, you know, that was covered under this project, and the MEDC wouldn't let us move forward with that. And then you go over here, Section Street, Chestnut Street, on this side.
Iron and Main.
Yeah,
Iron and Mine.
on the north side of US 2, then you have Section, you have Chestnut, you have Maple, you know, that section.
There's some stuff over there,
That
there's some
section's
stuff
gonna
in
get
Third
covered.
Ward.
7th Avenue down in Third
No,
Ward.
I was just
Yeah, you were worried about
wondering,
over
just in
here.
that section over there, that.
Yeah.
Right.
The-
Where your-
I think
the
the
cross main is gonna
the
be.
avenues, because the water mains all run, you know, north and south in those areas, the avenues are not gonna be covered. Those are times, though, then we might look at the overall project, and you might wanna say, okay, let's take, these avenues and, put in some local funding, maybe some street funding or
Yep.
some type, you know, to finish it off since they're there. You know, we can maybe take a look.
It'll be a
You're
dis-
gonna hear a lot of complaints if you got
For sure.
a cross street or
We
cross avenue that isn't done, and you've got everything done on both sides of it.
You can hear about it, and you probably have already, Railroad Avenue. You know, it all comes down to the funding. You know, the funding is only eligible for certain specific areas. Now, Railroad Avenue is gonna happen in 2014. Well, we stop at Maple, or not Maple, Walnut. We stop at Walnut. We are not gonna take the last 2 blocks, and that's because of the funding, the designations. It does not fund those last 2 blocks. And we're getting criticized for that, but, you know, that has to be done under local funding.
Well, you guys have a program, you have a street program.
We have a program.
It's gonna go out this far, and you may have to look at doing some of those things. We'll certainly talk about that. It won't be a surprise at the end. I mean, you guys will have to get into discussions of which streets, you know, aren't gonna be fully done.
Just to give some perspective, though, on this Act 51 formula and how we get our funding for streets based on the overall collection of revenues for roads. I think everybody's heard that the state of Michigan, the legislature's put out $100 million additional road money. And it's gonna run through the standard Act 51 formula. We just got our check, $19,000. That was our portion of the $100 million that went out. And you know, it's formula based. So you can see where, you know, where we are on the overall funding level of the state pot, so.
Well, we may have to have some work sessions or whatever you guys call them, when you know, just to talk specifically about some things when we get there. But it's a big project, so. Anyway, anything else? Good, thanks.
Thank you.
See you in a month.
That was a long 60 seconds.
Okay, the next thing on the appointments and presentations this evening is with the Jake Mangini Museum. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have before you one resignation, and then we also have, though, an application for a seat on the museum board. It's with regret that I have before you a resignation from Jacqueline Mosier. She's requested to leave the museum board, but we did get an application from Mary Kay Ebling to fill her seat. So the remaining seat, or that seat will go till January 2016.
Are there any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that Jacqueline Moser's resignation be approved and that Mary Cabelin be appointed to serve out the remainder of the open term expiring in January 2016.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menikini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
The next appointment and presentation this evening is on the Parks and Rec Committee. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We also have a resignation for a seat on the Parks and Recreation Committee from Lauren Heyman, and he has conflicting schedules, so he's asked to be removed from Parks and Rec. That is an open seat, so I do want to make a plug for anybody watching that this is a very good group, and as all our committees are, and so there's an open seat for anyone that's interested in working with our Parks and Rec Committee.
Any questions or comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that Lauren Hayman's resignation be approved.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes.
We have 3 items on our communications this evening. The first item is the approval of the special events application for the Easter egg hunt. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a annual event. Let's see, what year are we in on this Easter egg hunt, Trish? We're
2014.
on the year, yeah. How many years have we done this? This has been a very popular event. Takes place out at Marion Park. It'll be on April 19th, and as part of our permit process for use of public park, they filled out an application for this event. So we're looking for approval for the Easter egg hunt for this year's annual Easter egg hunt.
I was talking to one of the ladies that's been involved in this for many years, and she said this year we're gonna have 20,000 eggs.
That's a lot of eggs.
Yes, it is.
Hopefully, we don't get the 6 inches of snow like last year.
I'll make a recommendation that the application for the annual Easter egg hunt be approved for April 19th, 2014 at Marion Park.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by George. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
The last thing on the next thing on the agenda is Resolution 2014-10, the Dickinson County Solid Waste Management Plan Amendment. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the Solid Waste Management Committee, we received an application request from Niagara Development for a revision to the Solid Waste Management Plan. I put a complete explanation within your packet, but basically, the Solid Waste Management Committee reviewed the application, held the public hearings, and presented that to the county board, who then subsequently passed a resolution, which we also included for the revision. The next step is that each of the municipalities must also pass similar resolution to finalize the solid waste management plan. This resolution is attached for your approval.
So basically, what they want to do is take the old new page down, landfill, and allow construction material to be deposited into it as well?
That's correct.
Is that gonna interfere with Dickinson County's, right?
No, it does not.
Are there any other questions or comments? If
I
not,
see
I'll-
the Board of Commissioners approved it.
I see that.
That is Resolution 2014-10.
If no
I'll
other,
make a motion that we approve resolution 2014-10 for Dickinson County Solid Waste Management Plan.
Second.
motion made by George, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Last thing on the agenda is Resolution 2014-11, Arbor Day Declaration, April 25th, 2014. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm proud to announce tonight that we have just recently received our letter from the National Arbor Day Foundation that our application for Tree City USA has been approved. Something we worked on last year. If you remember last year at this time, we had a similar resolution for recognizing Arbor Day, and that was part of the application process. I think that, it's with the amount of urban forestry work that we've done since 2008, 2007, when we first started the plan, I think that we should be proud of the work that we've done in this area. April 25th is our National Arbor Day, and we have a similar resolution for this year. I'm also working with the school on a program, Arbor Day program. So I think it's a good event, especially for our community that we've supported. The residents have supported our tree planting and our urban forestry initiatives. So,
Make a motion that we approve resolution 2014-11, Arbor Day Declaration, April 25th.
Support.
Motion made by George, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our business for this evening. Does anyone from the audience wish to come up and address the council on any topic? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. Hey, Chris. George.
I was watching TV tonight, and on the news, and I see Dave Ball, Joe, that let water run is off.
We started calling people today to notify them that they should be shutting their water off. That is,
Okay, don't
that
you
is
think
correct.
maybe we should put it on TV? Are you gonna let everybody's run, or are you just allowing certain people?
Well, I'm not, David came into the city hall and worked with Mary on it. He just told me that the DEQ recommended starting to shut off. We were having issues with our well system,
Yeah.
keeping
That
up.
was explained on it.
Yeah, so
Well,
I'm not exactly sure what transpired between Ray and Mary, but she can speak on that.
Most of them, George, are gonna be told to stop running. There's some that have hoses because they have septics. He wants them to keep running. The dead ends, the ones that are at a dead end on the main, they want them to keep running. So overall, it's gonna be most of the people are going to be
Yeah.
told to shut it off.
Why don't you, if you know the people that you want, or if David knows, like you had just mentioned, people with hoses and the dead end connections, why don't you put this on the TV, on the scroll on the bottom, because I see there's only one announcement on there today, to call in, no, there's only one, Trish, on the bottom. To call in the office to find out if they can allow it or not.
David
That
and I
if
talked
you want them to shut their water off or not.
David and I talked about that today. The girls, like I said, started making phone calls today, but the plan is to put something on TV.
Okay.
And just get the word out. There's just some that he's concerned about, and we may just contact them and say, tell them specifically to leave it run.
I was surprised to see it. On Channel 6.
And actually, George, we talked about putting the let run as an announcement, to stop running, but Dave didn't want people who are on these dead
That's-
ends and hoses to.
No, that's why I suggested to have them call in the city hall here before they shut them off. So we ain't getting hit, and that was another thing. Could you come up, Mary, with a total of that it costs us for Peterson's there on this water line?
Yeah, we're close. We've still been thawing a little bit. There's still some outstanding invoices that we haven't received yet.
Just out of curiosity.
There's a spreadsheet developed, George, with everybody's name that's running, their phone number, where they're at, locations. We have all that documented. So the girls were just gonna go through and call them and tell them to shut them off.
That's what they thought.
That's what we're gonna do.
Well, no, he was asking now about the total cost for Peterson. How much
Yeah.
have we spent this winter?
And we don't have them all in yet. But we're close. I mean, we can give you very close to the end. Now, if things go south and we start shutting this off and 3 days from now, all of a sudden, we gotta start thawing again, that's gonna be a problem. So, we don't know that yet.
Okay, Joe, could you check with, there's water running into Legion, and also I checked with Eblings, and they're putting all their stuff up on pallets, so I don't know if they're having a problem or not, but they're getting stuff off the floor, so you might wanna double check. I know we had to mop the floor a number of times already at the Legion there, so they're having problems there. I guess that's about all for now, Chris.
Dr. Hayes?
I was wondering if we got anywhere with our new meters, or has there been any more thought on that?
Ray and I have had some discussions about them, and I'm in the process of looking at the 3 different vendors that offer automated meter reading. And we're scheduling meetings with these people to come to City Hall to sit down with us, to look at all their different systems and then evaluate them, cost it out, and see which makes the most sense for the city of Norway to move forward on. So Ray wants to add some more to that.
In discussions with Ray, apparently there are people in town who have high rates, and maybe if we had some kind of meter where we could encourage them to use their power at night rather than
Yeah, well,
day when we need it,
you need,
cut down our peaks, and then that would help.
yeah, you
spread
need
it
the
out.
data, you have to collect data to be able to develop a rate for an off-peak period. You know,
Well,
you
we
can't
could
just,
we could offer a lower rate, and if we're getting into discussion,
You'll need the meter to be able to capture that. I mean, not just waiting until you get the data, but just to offer it, we need to have the system in place, you know. To be
right,
able to
that's
have
what I was
that.
asking about the
Right.
meters, if they were in place, so if we discuss that in the upcoming.
Yeah, we plan to have a complete discussion about, you know, about the whole metering and where we're going with our rates.
It's the only question I had.
Lee?
Couple comments here. I mentioned earlier, I'd gone to I think it was called the kickoff meeting on Railroad Avenue, and a lot of questions were asked, and I was very impressed with Dave Ball, the working foreman. He seemed to have all the answers for it. Hopefully they're all right. And I also see in our memorandum here, someplace in there, was it the WPPI book we made, or was it the Michigan Municipal something or other, where they gave us kudos for saving so much money on our LED streetlights?
That was
was-
out of the WPPI.
that was the WPPI
WPPI, that was
letter
impressive.
that came out
Okay,
here.
that was good. And I don't know if the word got out on the Railroad Avenue project. July 7th is the kickoff on it.
Yeah, we have to have we always have a meeting down in the basement, or an additional meeting in the basement where we invite the people along the street so that they would have an opportunity to come in and ask questions. But it is July 7th, so, you know, we'll have to talk with the contractor, have the contracting engineer come back, and that'll be an evening meeting so people can come in.
And-
That's been well received.
Who got that contract, by the way, Rick?
That was Oberstar.
One other comment here, reading the Norway Current, under the Waseda Township News, there was something in there about where Waseda Township received fire protection proposal, and they have some questions. Are we changing rates, or
No, I did my annual,
plea?
we have a contract with both Norway Township and Waseda Township. And, you know, it's based off a calculation. It's fire runs, average 5-year call average, and then it's previous year's budget, approved budget, and it's, you know, I give it to them every year. So,
Just curious. That's all I have.
Well, I had one other thought, Tim, reading over the agenda, and you said in there that it's not required per charter to have a reading on any new proposals. Do we need to change our charter? Do we need to update our charter? We've had that discussion, I think the last time was about 10 years ago, and at that time, the conclusion was, well, there's not that much wrong with it, so it's too much work. So again, I'll ask the question, do we need to update our charter?
I don't think that our charter, even though it's a 1947 document, is that out of balance that that we really need to go to a charter revision. If you go to a charter revision, you'll have to get a charter committee, review revision committee, goes to vote, and there's quite a bit of work involved. I mean, you have to look at it and see how out of whack it might be. I don't find it a document that's hard to work towards or work with. You know, there's policy issues or policy items that we take care of, you know, and so, it's a lot of work, and, if you're, you know, the answer would be yes, if your charter was so out of whack that it was hard to function, but ours really isn't. It's general enough and specific enough here in areas where we can work with it.
So basically the same answer, it's more work than we need to do right now.
Yeah, I think so. You know, you can handle a lot of this through policy. So,
The only comment I have is, last meeting I had mentioned that one of the things we were gonna be looking at was a website redesign. And, at the DDA's meeting, last month, the DDA agreed to fund the website redesign. So we're going to be undergoing that process shortly. If anybody has ideas or input they'd like to give into something we should include, what they'd like to see, that kind of thing, we encourage the public comment on it. And if anybody does, please let us know what your thoughts are on this.
I think, and if you really have a burning desire to be part of the design team, you know, let us know. Because, it's going to take, you know, it's a three-month or so process. There's a team that's gonna come up from Civic Plus, to work with us. So, you know, that input is really valuable.
Joe, anything else?
I just want to give you a short update on the hydro. As expected, as the weather warms and later in the season like it has, the nights aren't getting cold enough to freeze everything up again. So we're expecting to see a flow of about 5,000 cubic feet a second by the end of the week. We should be running all the units and it's probably starting to spill water at that point already. So we'll be at full capacity. Right now, everything is operational. I still have some trouble spots, but all generators are operational right now.
Did they ever find anything? Was that 2 weeks ago we were talking about, was it Unit 4?
Yeah,
They
well,
just
there's been a
adjusted
few
it a
things
little
with
bit?
unit number 4. There's still an ongoing thing with unit number 4 that we're working on this week with some excitation, instrumentation that wasn't wired properly from 2002 that we're fixing. But we did find a problem with unit number 4 that it was falling off with loss of excitation. So that has been repaired. The unit has been running for several weeks now, and it is operational. So a couple little glitches with it, but we're trying to work through them and try to get them fixed before we get into the heat of it by the end of the week. But we've done everything we can do down there at this point with sandbagging and stuff, so.
No, who decided this was wired wrong in 2002?
Who decided it was wired wrong? Because it doesn't work right.
It doesn't
And
work
I
right,
had
so
a
you're
company
saying it
come
was...
in, I
And
had a
what,
company come in and look at it, and after they evaluated what the problem was, they're gonna have to do some rewiring. So
the company that originally did it is gonna correct their problem?
they don't exist anymore.
Joe, because we've had a few warm days here,
Yeah.
I've already been getting questions on the spring. I know we're a little
And-
early to be talking, turning it on, but I have gotten questions.
Yeah, I've heard some phone calls come in also. I haven't taken any personally, but I've heard people have asked. I would at least like to get, they're saying it's gonna cool off again next week.
Right.
So I'd like to get through at least another 2 weeks before we really look seriously at putting it back on.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was out there, because
Yeah.
like I said, I have been getting questioned on it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 55 and 60 this weekend, and then it's supposed to drop again for next week. So I'd like to try to just get a little bit further into the season before we turn it on. The other thing that I'm sure everybody is aware of is the water main break on the US 2 and 8 corridor in front of Cursed Oil. Tomorrow morning, between 5 and 7, you'll start to see our employees out there with putting up traffic control, give them a break. Traffic control people are coming with all these signs and barricades, arrow boards necessary to reroute the traffic down Saginaw to go over to 2nd Avenue and then back out to US 8. We're going to completely dig up that intersection from curb to curb, hopefully from curb to curb and not any farther than that. That main is an old cast iron main, so we're not sure how far it shattered at this point, but we will find out tomorrow. The old road bed is about 2.5 feet of concrete reinforced with rebar. James Peterson and Sons is coming with a large excavator with a concrete pick on the end of it to take that concrete out. We didn't have equipment large enough to do that. Baco didn't have anything available. I called all over today trying to find an excavator, but there wasn't one available in the UP. So they're coming in tomorrow to take care of that for us. As we open it up, the material that's coming out is going to be really wet. You're going to see all the employees from the street department over there. We're going to be hauling in dry fill. We have to compact everything. We have to restore it as close to original as we possibly can, according to MDOT specs. Put gravel, 2 feet of gravel above the sand bed, compact all that, and then we have to put at least 6 inches of cold mix over the top of that. And then when the batch plants open up, then we have to get hot mix and fix it properly. So that will be, hopefully it's going to be a one-day deal. The water will be shut off in the 600 block and 700 block of Brown Street. It'll affect a few customers. They were all notified today with door hangers and phone calls. So I don't really think there's a lot I missed. I just want everybody to know that construction is going on. And it's going to be a mess for a little bit, but it's a large main, and we got to get it fixed.
That one broke before, didn't it, a couple years ago?
That one broke 2 years ago, right on that corner, but it favored the east side, and we repaired it. And now, the way it looks today, when I was looking at it, I think it popped pretty much the whole width of the road, the way it looks, the way it popped the road. The road is totally buckled in the middle, and as you drive on the sides by it, the water squishes up through the cracks. So I know that whole surface is popped up. So we'll find out how bad it is tomorrow.
Joe, can you go into a little bit about what was going on with the cable channels with Viacom? Just so the public knows what was going on. And
Well, Viacom, there was a big discussion about payment and rate increases, and as normal, companies want more money, and the associations that we're associated with are reluctant to give them all that kind of all those increases. And so there's just discussions going back and forth. And Viacom was playing a trick because they can on their stations, advertising that you need to get a hold of your provider and let them know that you really want this station, and so you agree at a higher number, and that's why you were seeing the ads on there for that reason. And that really never panned out. Everything is taken care of as far as I know, unless Ray knows something different. It's been settled.
It's contract settled.
Yeah, and they mediated a decent increase for us. I don't know what that increase is. I haven't heard yet.
I just so people know the channels aren't going away.
They're not going away. That was just a scare tactic from Viacom to put it out there that they were going to lose everything and shut them off because they didn't come to an agreement yet. So, unless there's something else, that's pretty much all I have for right now.
Mary, Tricia, Larry, nothing, thanks. Ray.
Well, a couple things. Since we're talking spring, we talked at the staff level about starting to organize spring cleanup dumpsters. You know, we typically have our refuse dumpsters over at DPW. We're looking at the first weekend in May. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the first weekend in May.
We'll run it for a couple weeks.
Yep.
So, you know, for city residents, go over and you utilize the refuse dumpster. We do not do curbside, so that question always seems to come up. We haven't done that in a number of years now. We also want to plea that you use the paper dumpster over there for paper only, not cardboard, not trash. It's on the outside, and we know that it's there for our city residents for their convenience, but if it gets contaminated, it is a it is basically refuse at that point, and it's dumped and charged accordingly. So, you know, we need to, that's costly for our garbage customers. They're paying the bill for that. So help us self-regulate it so we can keep that activity, you know, for our city garbage customers, refuse, or city residents. Let's see, there was something else I was going to say, and my mind just went blank. Yeah, well, just in general, with the winter and the amount of work that our DPW crew has had to take. I mean, there are some standard activities that we just haven't been able to address. One of the jobs that we typically do during the winter is tree cutting, boulevard tree cutting. I've seen a couple of complaints or requests come through that we get after some of the boulevard trees now, and you know, we do have to address that. Got a number of jobs that we wanted our guys to work on this year. We're moving a compost site. That I think is going to get delayed a little bit with the spring in general, and then of course we have to finish the road going in. So we're going to end up probably having to open up the old compost site over by the wastewater plant, at least in the interim. I know the gates are open now, so that's going to stay until we can make the transfer. The other is on the boulevard trees. They'll go back to the boulevard trees. That's something I'm going to need to come to council with over the next 2 to 4 weeks on considering some kind of contracting for that, because I'm not sure if we can go another year without, you know, cutting down the trees. One of the reasons we do it during the winter is because the way that our guys handle it is that they cut the tree down, lay it out on the road, clean it up. And during the summer, that's a much more difficult activity, especially with the cars parked on the streets. And so really, in order to do it during the summer, you need the chipper and you need a bucket. You know, you need some way of handling it, so.
Ray, a number of years ago, and I think Joe, there was a company out there that offered, I know times have changed, but made an offer for $100 a tree. Why don't you see if you could find any of that stuff, and very possible, that is a very reasonable rate considering how many guys we send out in the equipment. If we can get it done for, I mean, I realize I doubt if the rates are the same, but if we can stay within that ballpark, I think you'd be taking a big load off of our employees at a very good rate. I remember Joe was at the time when we cut them trees down behind Vulcan on the big, the 13,000 line coming in.
Yeah.
It was right around that time that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who
I don't.
that might have been.
I think that was Asplin.
Yeah,
It probably was Aspen.
I think it was Asplin.
Asplin cut the trees down in the corridor for the power, but I don't know if they were the ones that said for $100 they'd do it.
I think it was them.
We had a quote for $100 per tree to come, because there were the amount of trees that we had to cut.
Okay.
I remember that
Well,
distinctly.
I can definitely call them and see what they can do,
I'm not saying
what
that's
kind of
what it
price.
costs, but-
Yeah, it's worth the phone call, but as long as you brought that up, it reminded me of something else I wanted to ask you about. You gave me the name and number of that guy for the pavilion.
Yes.
I called him, but left a message. They've never called me back. Is that someone that you knew, or a friend of yours knew, or?
You know Dave Vista?
Yeah,
Get a hold of Dave Vista. I got his, well, that number, I talked to that man off of that number.
okay. And I called it, and they just hadn't called me back, so.
Maybe if you get in touch with Dave Vista, he could give you the guy's name and a lot more information about it, Joe. He's from Kearney. Well, even if you maybe take a ride down, or someday you could, or if you know anybody down in Kearney, you could probably, find out who the person is.
Okay. I'll call Vista.
That's all I have.
That'll be good if we can get that going, to get that pavilion stuff.
Yeah, that's on the hit list, and I just want to get it lined up when the weather gets right to get it done, so.
Okay, we have no closed session this evening. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Support?
Motion made by Lee, supported by George. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein? Yes. Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
60 seconds.